Greetings, so welcome to lesson 6. For those of you in whatever cohort it might be, I have absolutely no idea. Sorry, the cat has absolutely lost her mind, so it might be quite a noisy video. So I won't deny you the pleasure of a few little starter questions to get your brains warmed up so that you can feel as horrified as the people in class who did them were. So the first question, does the past or present exist? Sorry, does the present exist, or is there only the future and the past? So whenever you think, oh, now's the present, it's actually the past. So there's no real present, is there? It's just past and future. There isn't the present. Wow. And you live in a simulation too, so strange old world. Next question, do numbers really exist? Are they just an imaginary concept to allow us to cope with the world? Because you have one apple. What is one by itself without any attachment to a thing? Who knows? Think about it. Get those brains warmed up. Don't worry, these questions will not come up in the exam, but this type of question might. So one of the things that you will have to do in 2 years' time, way away into the future, is to hunt and kill your own food, because society will be destroyed. No, it won't. It'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine. What you will have to do in the future is answer some of these literary questions for the World of the Hero module. Now, in the exam, the final paper, there will be 3 questions worth 10 marks. There'll be other questions, and it's out of 100 in total for this particular exam paper, but 3 questions worth 10 marks each will be literary analysis questions. And in a sense, we've been building up to that as a concept by looking at the background of Homer and the values and the world that it might exist in, so that we can understand the impact of various words and phrases and ideas and actions on the audience. So when it comes to it, you will analyse a passage from the Odyssey, which is what we'll be reading, and you've already started reading. A passage from the Aeneid, which is a Roman story that continues on from the fall of Troy, and we'll do that in the second year. And then you will need to do a comparison between them, which is an interesting type of question. Now, those comparison questions we probably won't do in the first year because you need these 2 different works to do them, but we certainly can do the analysis of the Odyssey questions. Now, so this is why it's important to understand, literary techniques and impacts, and we're going to look at those a little bit later on. In terms of literary analysis, that could be part of other questions as well. So there are 20-mark questions and there are 30-mark questions in the exam, and one of them could be literary analysis as well. For some you have a choice, so you can try and steer clear of it, but it's something that you need to be prepared for nonetheless, just like Maymay. Maymay is prepared for a literary analysis question. Aren't you, Maymay? Yes, you are. Thank you. So, moving on. Some literary techniques. Right, so here we go. I don't know if this presentation will work as a video, but we'll try. You'll get the points that I'm trying to make. So here we have a kitten, a lovely, sweet kitten, and I mean, oh, it's reversed there, not here, not this screaming, shrieking monster, this Hydra. How could you possibly make this kitten cuter without changing it, or without altering it? What could you do to make it seem cuter without changing it as a thing in itself? Well, obviously, you could add something scary and appalling and fundamentally the complete opposite next to it. And thus, through contrast, you heighten the essential characteristics of the thing you are talking about. Now, Homer uses contrast, as do so many authors, a lot, and there's no limit to the ways in which he uses contrast. but I think some important ones to look for are civilization and barbarism, because that's a fundamental theme of the Odyssey. Is a character civilized or not? Male and female behaviors, so the nature of men, the nature of women, role reversals as well, but that's a slightly different technique, one might argue, and tension and tranquility. And the way that tension and tranquility is often expressed is through the mortal and the immortal world. Because the gods are in many ways safe from harm, you have all these scenes of the gods being quite frivolous and silly and getting upset about tiny things or relaxing in great luxury, whilst in the next line or paragraph or scene you have humans dealing with the most appalling suffering and bloodshed and war and heartbreak. And that contrast between the two is great for highlighting the suffering of humans, but also the luxury of the gods. Contrast works both ways, or certainly can. So the next technique, or it was not that boring, maybe. I thought I explained that well. No, okay. The next technique or contrast, the next technique that Homer uses is, as demonstrated by this dove holding an olive branch, is symbolism. And this is obviously, again, very dependent on the society that you're living in. If you are not from our society, you would have no idea what this dove holding an olive branch means. And we all know it's a symbol of peace. But if you were from a strange Amazon tribe and you saw this bird with an olive branch, you might think, what does it symbolize, if anything? Theft, nest building? You need to understand the context to understand the symbolism of items, actions, so on and so forth. And here we have another bit of symbolism, the jackboot, the fascist jackboot crushing the dove of peace. Again, if you don't understand the context of these two symbols, you don't get the meaning the writer is trying to convey. So, symbolism and context can be absolutely crucial to the literary impact of Homer. So when societal values like Xenia or Kleos or Time or Techne, or the role of women or lineage or all of these things, when they're invoked and when they're challenged, that can add real tension to a passage, or excitement or sadness or heartache. And again, you need to have a bit of an understanding of the context to understand quite why that's the case. Understanding this context is also, and symbolism is also important when it comes to role reversals, and that's an extremely significant event in Homer. When men behave like women, when women behave like men, when rich men behave like poor men. This is considered especially unnatural and strange and unusual in Homer. And so again, you need to have an understanding of the context to understand that this isn't done and that this is a big thing. Another important sort of symbol can be symbols of the divine, especially in Homer. So if an eagle flies above an individual or can be seen in the distance, then that is usually a very clear sign that Zeus approves of an action or is about to be involved. So the moment an eagle appears is a very significant event that you need to register using your contextual knowledge of the world of Homer. Now, this one doesn't necessarily work so well over video, but the idea is explicable, and that really is the kind of the power and the excitement of using divine or kitten intervention. No, I think we'll stick with divine intervention. Maybe is Mimi a god? A god, Mimi? A goddess? So, imagine you're walking into Basvic one day. So you're walking along the road. You walk over the traffic lights. You walk through the car park, and you walk into Basvic. Not a great story. Not a very exciting story. Not much symbolism or importance to that story. But if you introduce the divine, you can turn something relatively mundane into something full of excitement and symbolism. So imagine you're walking along the road to Basvic. Suddenly, Ares appears So now we get this sense of danger because we know that he's a psychopathic war god. We sense that you are, you must have done something terrible to anger the gods or come to their attention. He then starts throwing explosive bombs at you. So your life is now at risk. You've irked a god so much, he's trying to kill you. So you're fleeing down the road towards Basilic. From the heavens appears Aphrodite, who saves you. So what does that tell you? What does that tell people about you? Are you similar to Aphrodite? Are you are you lustful? Do you represent sexuality, or are you so handsome or beautiful that you have become her favourite? So she saves you, and you run into Basilic and sit down and do your classics work as you should. But divine intervention, adds this whole other level of excitement and symbolism and meaning to stories that could be exciting but could be mundane. Right, now this is a very common thing, a common technique or idea, if you like, that will be almost a kind of go-to technique when you're looking at literary passages in Homer for the exam. And that is choice of words, or diction, as it's sometimes called. And the choice of words changes your understanding of an individual and of a situation. So, for example, the word nice, that is possibly the blandest word in the English language that almost doesn't mean anything. But if you use a synonym, so a word that means the same thing, you can completely change the characterization of the speaker or the action. So, again, it's not a word I use a lot, but a year or two ago they assured me that this was a meaningful slang word. If somebody describes someone or something as peng, then you can understand a huge amount about their character. They're not a 50-year-old newsreader. That they're probably not a deeply sophisticated classics professor. That they are probably from a specific background and from of a specific age, or trying to pretend that they are. So, Boris Johnson is not going to stand up in Parliament and say, I have a peng plan for solving COVID. Well, he might, who knows, but that's unlikely. And I still don't really know what it means, and it's a horrible word to say. Ugh. Ooh, so, again, think about how these words would change the context. So pulchritudinous, that also means nice. But if someone uses that word, that carries with it a whole weight of baggage. If someone says, this cat is pulchritudinous, it'd be a very strange thing to say, but it would be, what's the word I'm looking for? Unnecessarily complex and unusual language. Someone who is trying to appear more educated, more sophisticated than they perhaps are, or someone who truly is deeply sophisticated and from another era or another time. Same goes for the word pleasant. That also means nice. But this is another situation where context is so important, because especially in an English sense, if you described food as pleasant or someone as pleasant, there's actually a quite sort of subtle negative connotation to that. How's so-and-so's girlfriend? She's very pleasant. That normally means not very nice, but I don't want to say. So the same thing applies to a degree with the words that Homer chooses to make his point. Run. Sure, great. Swap that with hurtling, and you get a completely different picture. Someone operating at high speed, almost out of control, aggression, maybe passion, maybe a sense of desire and focus. So the same word, same meaning, but a great load carried with it. Oh yes, and another word for nice, peachy. So if someone says peachy, well, you get sort of 1950s Cockney. Some people have never heard the word peachy used for nice. So all of these words mean nice fundamentally, but they carry with them a great deal of contextual or emotional baggage, if you like. So yes, sorry, that was word choice. So you can call it diction, but in these questions that you're answering, just select the word and explain why it has that impact, or the impact that it has. Homer uses the word careening or thundering or charging, and this word emphasizes the power and speed of the action of Odysseus, whilst also hinting at a loss of control or aggression. So it's really unpacking what the words mean and how they develop the character. So another thing that Homer uses on a relatively regular basis and is famous for is the simile, the comparison. Now, similes in Homer, often called Homeric similes, are used in a variety of different ways, but perhaps the most important way they're used is to make the exotic relatable to the audience. So a lot of Homer's audience would have lived by the sea, and some may have travelled on the sea a little bit, and many would have stayed simply in the villages on the mountainside where they lived, and some would have been noble lords with a great deal of travel and experience. So there would have been this variety of experiences, but none of them would have interacted with gods and goddesses on Mount Olympus or in exotic faraway palaces or islands with nymph queens on. So Homer uses similes, these comparisons, like or as, to make something exotic and fantastic relatable. And we'll look at some of these Homeric similes in great detail, but this comparative technique is something that Homer is famous for, and he creates these very long stories. The similes that you've got here are just a slightly humorous example of similes, but Homer really develops them with a whole paragraph of simile, as we'll see when we read the book. So if you feel like if you fancy practicing your similes, then you can have a go at this, but this is getting a bit dated now, this one, but feel, simile away if you so choose. So another technique that Homer uses, and this could be used for the shorter essays or the longer essays, is structure. Now, structure means all sorts of things. You could go for sentence structure. So short sentence structure can make something quick and tense. He ran, stop. He jumped, stop. He ate, stop. Sorry, that's a crap story. But you see what I mean? Just these short, tense, short phrases fired out repeatedly can really build up speed and tension, and then long, flowing sentences where you describe something in minute detail where not much happens can really bring the pace down, calm things down, or focus on an emotion and make things sad. So sentence length can have make a real difference. And the thing to take on board there especially is that remember that this is a poem and it's performed. So yes, we've got the written text, but when you're considering literary techniques, remember that it is a performed poem. So there, a skilled poet could perhaps make a lot more of sentence length and structure. Now, this is shown by this world's shortest novel by Ernest Hemingway. And I think I really like this because it really gets across how short sentences can make the brain create a story that goes with it. So 6 words to this story: for sale, baby shoes, never worn. Now, the instinctive place to go with that probably is quite a sad story. So you've got this couple who was so excited to have a baby, and they bought all of the things that they needed for the baby. There was this great anticipation, this desire to provide everything that the baby wanted, and the baby died before it came to the stage of wearing the shoes, and they are so distraught, so devastated. They probably can't have another baby, otherwise they would have kept the shoes, and so they've sold them because they need the money, because they're desperate. So And again, that's sort of my reading of that, but I'm sure you were all there or thereabouts. And where is any of that actually said in that story? It's not. You know, your brain puts it in there. It could just easily be a happy story. So a couple, they have a baby, and then they have a party, one of those revolting baby showers or whatever they're called, and everyone gives them so much clothes, so much shoes, so much of everything that they've got more than they know what to do with. So they just sell some of them for a bit of money that they're going to donate to a cat charity. And so everyone lives happily ever after, even the cat. So, you know, both of those are completely valid and fit in with those words. And so much of that comes just from our own imagination, our own head. And, you know, Homer can do that too, or any author can do that too, with a certain, you know, word or phrase that allows you to fill in the gaps. So other things to think about with regard to structure, and we'll do these in a bit more depth later on, especially the bottom one. You know, structure within paragraphs. You start with short, snappy sentences, finish the paragraph with a long one, and that changes the nature and flow. You can have a paragraph of short, powerful sentences, or, you know, a paragraph of the divine and then a paragraph of the mortal. So, you know, there can be contrast, and you can create structure with paragraphs. You can also create significant structure with books of the Odyssey, or chapters. You know, they are chapters, but we do call them books. So there's some very specific ways that Homer does that, and we will do that in a lot more depth. But, you know, you can have a book of great tension that focuses on mortals, and then you can change to a book of slightly more light-hearted relief, focusing on the divine. You know, you can use books as a way of creating segments that contrast and at the same time flow with each other. Don't worry, we'll do all that in significant depth. But perhaps the most obvious sort of structural point that you'll have seen is starting in the middle of things, in media res. So when the Odyssey starts, it's actually almost at the end of Odysseus's journey. Strangely, it doesn't start with Odysseus in Ithaca working his way to Troy and then back again. It starts with Odysseus a couple of weeks before he actually makes it back to his home. Now, what I created on Quizlet is a whole series of 3 specific quizzes that are quite useful for these literary techniques. So if you search for Basvik Classiv, and then it'll say Homeric literary devices or functions, you should be able to find them. If you can't find them that way, then you have to search via my username for Quizlet, which is Guns, G-U-N-S, and A-N-D, Pickups, P-I-C-K-U-P-S. And then via my username, you should be able to find these literary Quizlets. They're 14 questions each, and it'll say, do this one first, do this one second, do this one third. And the first one is the definition of 14 different techniques that most of the ones that we've covered here and some more. The second one is an example of those techniques in Homer. And the third one is how those techniques work. And it's the third one I absolutely want you to be very familiar. Well, all of them really, but the third one is the crucial one. How technique works, how it has an impact on the audience. So have a look at those, have a play with all 3. So back to these 10-mark questions. So how do you go about doing it? Well, you need to select about 7 or 8 extracts from the passage that you're given. And you'll be given a question. And it probably makes sense to use about 2 paragraphs, maybe 3, depending on the question, depending on your writing length, depending on your answer. Sorry, the cat hides up there and then she ambushes me. Can you see? Yeah, she'll jump down mid-video at some point. Anyway, sorry, distraction. So there'll be 7 or 8 extracts. You need to select 7 or 8 extracts, put them into paragraphs, and when you're writing, you need to use short quotes, so 2 or 3 words that highlight the extracts as a whole. When you're answering the questions that you're given, if appropriate, you need to highlight the literary technique used. So if the question is, how vividly does Homer portray Telemachus' meeting with Athene, you would say, Homer uses simile to emphasize the speed and desperation of Telemachus in attempting to meet Athene, and then the quote would be like a running deer. And then you would say this simile adds, this adds vividly to the situation, because we all understand that deers, run extremely quickly. There may be a sense of, a hunt. So Telemachus is being portrayed almost as this kind of frightened, fragile creature as he runs towards Athene. So there we go. So we're using a little bit of extract. We're explaining how that extract answers the question, and that's a crucial thing. The mistake that a lot of people do is they go through the passage and say, well, here is a simile. This choice of words makes us think of this or makes us feel this, but they don't relate it to the question. Now, some questions are quite broad. How vividly, basically, does Homer write in this passage? It'll be a little bit more specific, but how vividly does Homer depict the relationship of Odysseus and Penelope? And you've got free rein. Sometimes it's a bit more specific, and sometimes it's got a couple of focuses, things that you have to concentrate on, and that is the case. So I don't know what happened there. Something went a bit wrong with the recording, but we did everything we needed to do on the last slide. So what I would like to do now is the following activity from the book. And what I'd like to do with this is not to do it as the assignment, but to do it as a bit of a practice. So find this chapter, or this page in the book rather. It's the one next to the sort of Homeric hero silhouettes, sort of 10, 12 pages in, something like that. Now what I would like you to do is to go through it, identify as many techniques, be they word choice, be they simile, be they metaphor, be they sentence length, or the actions of characters. Remember, the author chooses the actions of the characters, and they too can obviously have an impact. So find 7 or 8 and explain how they match the following criteria, or rather how they answer the following question. How vividly does Homer portray Achilles' anger and the intervention of the gods in this passage? So this is an interesting question because it's got 2 chunks to it. Normally there'd be 1, but this has got 2, and you need to answer both. So a 2-paragraph structure probably makes the most sense here. 1 paragraph on Achilles' anger and 1 on the intervention of the gods. Having said that, so many of the things that are written in this passage could do both. Could express both the anger of Achilles and the intervention of the gods. So if you've got lots of crossover, or you're using the same example and you're explaining clearly why it does both, then that's excellent. That's a great thing. So comb through the passage. How many can you get? Can you get 7 or 8? Now in class, they had 6 minutes to do this, but there's no way of me slowing you down. And to be honest, I'm happy for you to take a bit of time doing it. So comb through the passage with a nice highlighter. Highlight things that relate to answering the question, and then in just a little note form, explain how they do it. You doing that? Well, good. I'm sure you all paused the video and did as you were told. So now we will carry on. Right. So I'm not going to give you a complete answer to this question. I'm sure you've put forward some very sophisticated and important ideas and points, but the sort of thing we're looking for would be something like this. So we're reading through and we see, his heart and his shaggy breast was torn in thought. Okay, so we want to select a short quote that really sums all of that up, that sentence, that action, that event. And I think just 3 nice words, torn in thought. And we would say his heart was, open quotations, torn in thought, close quotations. this vividly depicts his anger because, and then we need to say why, this little extract that we've chosen vividly depicts anger. Well, obviously, you can look at it like this. Achilles' anger is so powerful and so confusing that it almost ripped apart, the most important organ in his body. His anger is so powerful, he's almost threatened by physical violence to himself, from himself. This is such a powerful, savage word, torn. He hasn't sort of got a mildly sore heart. It is a torn heart. His shaggy breast was torn in thought. So, what else could we go through here? What else can we do here? Well, we can, 1,001 things. Well, we've got this idea of the white-armed goddess Hera. So there we've got a little bit of contrast, perhaps. We've got this white, pure, feminine figure of Hera up in the clouds, sending Athene down from heaven to do her bidding, down into the murky, filthy, violent world of humans. So the intervention of the gods is this intervention of transition from a calm world of luxury to mortal anger and suffering, demonstrated by this description of a Hera as white-armed. What else? Well, we could look at some of the actions of characters as well. So what's the impression conveyed when Athene grabs the son of Peleus, that's Achilles, by his hair? She's almost treating she is treating the greatest warrior in the world, like an animal, like a horse, like a dog, like a child, just this kind of grab. No. So the fact that he is the most powerful, dangerous man on the planet is irrelevant to the goddess. That's how important, that's the nature of divine intervention. And you could look at that from another angle too. You could say, Achilles' anger is so terrible, he's about to do something so awful with such speed that Athene has no choice but to just reach out and grab him. She doesn't have time to stand in front of him and gently persuade him not to do it. So, you could look at it from a variety of different angles. Okay, so those are just some ideas, and there's plenty more that you can pick out of that passage. So, what I would like to do now is to attempt the second question that I have uploaded, and I would like you to try and do it in full in 15 minutes and then upload it to this sort of lesson assignment, as it were. So same techniques apply. Go through the question. So read the question, go through the passage, highlight 7 or 8 different techniques, have a quick think about how they answer the question, and then put it in full form. So a full kind of, not quite essay form. One thing that I think I've got to mention, this needs to be fully handwritten in prose, in a sense as if it was part of a normal essay. Don't bullet point it or anything like that. But you don't get any official marks for structure. So hopefully it will be a couple of paragraphs. No introduction, no conclusion. Don't bother, waste of time. If it is just one big paragraph and you've got point, explanation, evaluation, and you've just got 7 or 8 times, a little clumsy possibly, but still possible to get full marks. Don't waste time writing a 3-line conclusion and a 3-line introduction, because that could be a big chunk of your essay. So ideally 15 minutes, very strict, very timed, because that's what people did in class, and I really think you should be trying to keep the same experience as much as possible. I can't check, but as classicists, I know that your honour is unimpeachable. Anyway, I hope all that made sense, and do remember, if something in one of these videos does not make sense, send me a message on Teams, send me an email, have a chat with me after class, and I will hopefully explain everything. Now, this is an assignment, a sort of formal assignment, if you like. I really wouldn't I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it. It's more me just wanting to see how you write and where you are after 6 months of, not doing much academic stuff and almost no timed stuff. So that's really what it's all about. I will mark it. Your grade doesn't mean anything or influence anything. It just gives me a starting point. So that's what this is. So do upload this. You absolutely have to upload this to this assignment. If you don't, I will pursue you with the fury of Zeus. Anyway, I will see you next week, I think, for both classes who watch this. I don't know. I've no idea anymore. But I'll see you in the next lesson. Take care.